Dear friends, English literature, Elizabethan and Jacobean drama. The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. Brief questions with answers. Brief questions 51 to 98. Question 51. What is written in the scroll along with the portrait of Portia? Answer. Turn you where you ladies and claim her with a loving kiss. Question 52. What does Portia offer to Bassanio after he chooses the right casket? Answer. Portia commits herself and all she owns to her new Lord Bassanio and a ring as a symbol of their union. Question 53. What does Bassanio promise to do about the ring? Answer. Bassanio promises never to part from, lose, or give away the ring and to wear it as long as he lives. Question 54. Who are the second pair of lovers in the play? Answer. Nerissa and Gratiano are the second pair of lovers in the play. Question 55. Who are the third pair of lovers in the play? Answer. Lorenzo and Jessica are the third pair of lovers in the play. Question 56. What are the lines of the song that catches Bassanio's imagination in the choice of the cascade? Answer. Tell me where is fancy buried, or in the heart, or in the head. Question 57. What does Bassanio say to Portia about Antonio? Answer. Antonio is the kindest man and unwearied spirit in doing courtesies to his dearest friend. Question 58. What has been reported about to the ships of Antonio? Answer. All the ships of Antonio are reported to have been lost in the storm of the sea. Question 59. What does Shylock decide to do when Antonio lost all his ships? And so Shylock decides to stick to his bond and have his revenge upon Antonio by demanding justice. Question 60. What does Portia decide to do after the departure of Bassanio? Answer. Portia, in her sincere attempt to help her husband, decides to leave the house and go to the court of Venice in disguise. Question 61. Why was Antonio afraid of Shylock? Answer. Antonio publicly insulted Shylock by calling him a dog, and now he would, without any mercy, take revenge upon him. Question 62. Why can't Antonio depend on the Duke of Venice? Answer. Because the Duke is strict in judgment and would not take the risk of losing the good name of Venice by helping Antonio going against the bond. Question 63. What did Portia say while she left her house? Answer. Portia declares that she and Nerissa would go to a monastery 2 miles off and remain there till their husbands return. Question 64. What was the plan of Portia to help Antonio? Answer. Portia disguises herself as a lawyer to plead for Antonio in the court of Venice in the guise of Dr. Valerio, the famous lawyer of Padua. Question 65. What role was assigned to Nerissa in the disguise plan? And so Nerissa was to disguise herself as the young assistant to the lawyer. Question 66. How did Portia and Nerissa go to Venice? Answer. Portia and Nerissa accompanied Bassanio and Gratiano to Venice in the guise of the lawyer and his assistant. Question 67. What is the trial scene? Answer. The trial scene means the scene in which Antonio had to face the charge of Shylock for his failure to pay off his debt to him in time. Question 68. What is the scene in which the trial was held? Answer. In scene 1 of Act 4, the trial was held. Question 69. What does the Duke say to Antonio in the beginning of the scene? Answer. The Duke sympathetically tells him that his adversary Shylock is a stone-hearted, a contemptible fellow, devoid of any human feeling and lacking in even the least touch of mercy. Question 70. What does Shylock plead in the trial? Answer. Shylock pleads to the Duke that he will stick to the condition of the bond and will not accept anything except the pound of flesh from Antonio's body. Question 71. What does the Duke question Shylock? Answer. How shall thou hope for mercy rendering none? Answer. Question 72. how does Shylock claim the pound of flesh from Antony's body? Answer. Shylock claims the pound of flesh as he had dearly bought it. Question 73. Why does the Duke delay the judgment in the Merchant of Venice? Answer. Because the Duke is waiting for Valerio, a learned doctor of law who will come from Padua to take part in the trial. Question 74. How does Nerissa disguise herself in the court? So Nerissa dresses herself like a lawyer's clerk. Question 75. What does Dr. Valerio write to the Duke in the letter? Answer. Dr. Valerio writes to the Duke that he is sending a young doctor of Rome named Balthazar to act in his place as he is ill. Question 76. Who is actually Dr. Balthazar? Answer. The young Dr. Balthazar is no other than the young lady Portia who comes to the court in the dress of a doctor of laws. Question 77. What does Portia, disguised as a doctor of laws, speak about mercy? Answer. Mercy is like the gentle rain which drops from heaven upon a place beneath to bless both the river and the receiver, both the giver and the receiver. Question 78. From whom is mercy the most powerful one? Answer. Mercy is the most powerful feeling in those who have the highest authority. Question 79. What does Bassanio propose to repay the debt? Answer. Bassanio offers to pay 10 times of the amount Antonio had received from Shylock, and if it does not satisfy him, he will lay down his life instead of Antonio. Question 80. What does Shylock say to the proposal of Bassanio? And so Shylock sticks to his bond and says that there is no power in the earth to change the bond, and he stays to the bond. Question 81. Who is Daniel? And so Daniel is a great prophet of the pre-Christian period who was famous for his judgment. Question 82. What does Bassanio say to save Antonius' life from the Jew? Answer. Bassanio is ready to sacrifice his life, his dearest wife, and the whole of his world to save Antonio from the devil, the Jew. Question 83. What is the miracle that saves the life of Antonio? And so the learned lawyer prohibits the Jew from shedding even a drop of blood and asks him to take just 1 pound of flesh, not more or less. Question 84. Why did Shylock break the judgment? Why did Shylock break the agreement with Antonio? Answer. As it was impossible for Shylock to cut 1 pound of flesh, not more or less, without shedding any blood, he broke the agreement with Antonio and wanted to go away with the principal amount of debt. Question 85. What is the response of Shylock to this interpretation of the bond? And so Shylock withdraws his claim over Antonius' flesh and wants to go away with the principal amount of debt. Question 86. Give me my principles and let me go. Who made this remark? And so Shylock made this remark. Question 87. What is the warning given to Shylock by the lawyer? And so the lawyer warns Shylock that if 1 drop of Christian blood is shed, his lands and goods will be confiscated by the state of Venice. Question 88. How does Shylock react when the Duke proposes that if Shylock shows some humbleness, the penalty of the state taking half of his goods will be reduced? And so Shylock does not accept the proposal and says, "No, take my life and all." Question 89. What does Portia agree to receive from Bassanio as a reward? And so finally Portia agrees to receive 2 tokens as a remembrance: Bassanio's gloves and ring. Question 90. How does Bassanio react to Portia's proposal? And so Bassanio refuses to give him the ring because his wife has given him the ring with a promise that he will never part with the ring. Question 91. Does Bassanio withhold the proposal of the lawyer? And so no, Bassanio, being persuaded by Antonio, sends the ring to the lawyer by Gratiano. Question 92. Where does the turning point of the Act 4 end of the story fall? And so the turning point of the story and of the Act 4 falls in the line 304. tarry a little, there is something else. Question 93. Is the rule of law enough or absolute? No. Answer: no. It is. If the rule of law is not tempered with mercy, it becomes inhuman and destructive. Question 94. What has become of Shylock at the end of the suit? Answer: Shylock is left stripped of his daughter, his property, and his religion. Question 95. What does Portia not accept the invitation to dinner arranged by Bassanio? And so because Portia and Nerissa want to reach Belmont a day before their husbands get back there. Question 96. How can Orpheus draw trees, stones, and floods to him? Answer: with the sweet power of music, Orpheus can draw trees, stones, and floods to him. Question 97. Who is Orpheus? Answer: Orpheus is a musical musician of ancient Greece. Question 98. What are the fit actions of a man who does not love music? Answer: a man who does not love music is fit only for treacherous actions, for hitching conspiracies, and for acts of plunder. Thank you friends for watching my video.